So welcome everyone. I think we're just waiting for a few more people who are being admitted to this webinar. And it's great to see so many people joining this afternoon for this lunch and learn. So thank you all very much. I think we'll get underway. We have about an hour to have some really great conversations and to hear from a fantastic speaker and also from a really great host from our Q&A session. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Catherine Ross. I'm the Chief Scientific Officer for Scotland. And as part of that role, I am Head of Profession for the scientific workforce across the NHS in Scotland. But I'm here this afternoon also in the role of President of the Science Council. So it gives me great pleasure really to be able to celebrate not only British Science Week, which I know there's been a lot of celebrations across the UK, really celebrating scientists, but also to celebrate Healthcare Science Week, to celebrate the fantastic scientists that work across the NHS, across the UK. I'm just going to pass on to the next slide, if that's okay. For those of you who aren't familiar with the Science Council, I'm just going to give you a bit of a brief overview, if that's okay. And indeed, the Science Council is a large organisation which really, with a royal charter that has a diverse and really growing science profession. Our vision for the Science Council is to ensure trust, not only in science, but in our scientists, and to provide a respected and innovative workforce, really to meet what we know are significant, not just national and regional challenges, but more importantly, now today, some significant scientific global challenges. And our purpose as the Science Council is to connect science professions and also scientists across different professional groups. And you can see that from the Lunch and Learn sessions that we've been hosting across this week, a very diverse group of scientists that we've had sharing their stories, but also to offer professional recognition for scientists. And we do that in a number of ways, which I'll speak to in just a moment. Next slide, please, Liz. And we're actually a significant collaboration across a number of different professional bodies and also indeed learned societies. And for those of you on the call this afternoon, I hope that you can see some of the organisations that you are a member of. And because we're celebrating Healthcare Science Week, for the healthcare scientists on the call, many of the organisations who are members of the Science Council represent the scientific workforce across the NHS. So a broad and diverse group or a community of scientists that give us the opportunity to learn from each other and also really to share knowledge across different sectors. I'll pass on to the next slide, if that's okay, Liz. But really one of the key ways that the Science Council operates, and that's in terms of professional recognition across the breadth of science. And we do that by offering not only chartered scientist status, but also chartered science teacher, and also for our registered scientists and registered science technicians. And a key element of that is how we ensure a sustainable pipeline of a workforce coming through into the fantastic world of scientific careers. And we also very much work very closely with the Gatsby organisation in terms of improving routes in from apprenticeships. We also work very closely with employers. Next slide, Liz. And you can see hopefully some of your employing organisations as well. And that's really to ensure that we have a large stakeholder group across different education and training landscapes, really to ensure that we are absolutely readying our scientific workforce for what they will expect whenever they enter into the profession, but also what the evolving professions and employers need from our scientists and from the education of our scientists. Next slide, Liz. So bringing us very rapidly now into the main topic for this afternoon. This is a part of a series that the Science Council are hosting this week as part of British Science Week. And I'm sure you can see there across a number of different topics. We're exceptionally pleased to have two great speakers with us this afternoon. We've got Professor David Brettle. David is the Chief Scientific Officer at Leeds Teaching Hospital and Honorary Professor at the University of Salford. We're very pleased to have David speaking with us this afternoon. He has a long history, I'm not going to say just how long, David working in medical physics and medical physics imaging, but also has been involved in the Science Council for a long time and was president of the Institute of Physics and Engineering in Medicine. And David's going to talk to us about his career and some of the ups and downs and the challenges of research and innovation in the NHS. And I'm just going to touch briefly on our healthcare science workforce, David, of which you are indeed one. And our healthcare scientists work across a number of different areas within the NHS. They're highly specialist scientists in sometimes very unique and expert areas. They can range from our laboratory scientists through to our medical physics and our more patient-facing clinical physiologists. But a significant and more emerging group really are our data scientists, health informatics and epidemiologists as well. So really a significant breadth of careers in health. David's going to give us a potted history of some of the challenges that he has faced, but also I think some of the opportunities and some of the vision for the future in terms of pathology and imaging. We also have Professor Ian Young. Ian is going to really facilitate our question and answer session at the end. Ian holds many roles. He is the Professor of Medicine at Queen's University in Belfast, but also is the Chief Scientific Advisor for Health in Northern Ireland and is also Head of Profession for the Scientific Workforce in Health and Social Care in Northern Ireland. But he's also Director of Research. So I suspect many of the questions and many of the conversations after David's talk in terms of the Q&A will be around that research, innovation and the role that scientists play, particularly in health and some of the opportunities at this moment in time for really innovative thinking and some of the opportunities to expand that and translate that into making a difference for our patients. So without any further ado, I'm going to hand over to David. David, thank you so much for joining us this afternoon. It's a great pleasure to have you with us. Thank you.
And thank you, Catherine, for the introduction. I'm hopefully sharing my screen now. Perhaps you can give me a thumbs up, Catherine, if that's
That's absolutely perfect, David. That's ideal. Thank you.
Thank you. So good afternoon, everybody, and thank you to the Science Council and also to the Institute of Physics and Engineering and Medicine for inviting me to present this afternoon. So my talk, basically, it's life and research, the ups and downs, digital pathology and emergence of AI. Well, actually, it's my story. It's my academic journey and a few bits in between. So hopefully you'll find some of this enjoyable, interesting, and hopefully there is a purpose about the future of my work and the relevance from the history. The bits in between are just some nice, interesting things. They will be in yellow, so you'll know when they're not my academic journey as such, and are just some points of interest. So we'll start at the beginning. So this is me at 3. This is on the left there. That's probably the only photo I have as a child, a young child, and you can see there some stages in between, sort of probably 10, 12, and then when I was 18. But you'll see from that list, I had a checkered start in life. I joined the Cubs and was invited to leave. I didn't do very well at school, and I still tried to do A-levels, but again, was invited to leave. I then had a little period of doing various jobs, literally making dog kennels and cleaning the streets. Eventually, I did join the Royal Air Force. Unfortunately, I was also invited to leave. Didn't do anything wrong, don't worry. It was just a disagreement about my career. And unfortunately, then I was pretty much homeless for 2 weeks because it's very difficult to go back home after you've joined the forces. So I did actually end up in a homeless hostel in Nottingham. But do you know something? All of that was helped me with my journey. And to me, though, I was awesome. And you can see there, to me, I was Mike Myers. So the RAF, though, taught me several things, including determination, self-belief, discipline, focus, all that military things, I guess. but it did give me the confidence to actually go home, even though I found that difficult. And then I did actually, whilst unemployed, retry my A-levels. This time I actually found that I could actually do physics. It's quite surprising, really. When you're young, you can't necessarily do things that you find later in life you can do, but physics was definitely one for me. So I actually achieved enough grades to go and do a higher national diploma in physics and electronics at Lancashire Polytechnic. So here's my first aside, just for interest. This is the campus at Lancashire Poly back in the day, and you can see the bottom left picture, the arrow pointing to 42nd Street. That is where I met my future wife, and in fact, it is our pearl wedding anniversary on the 18th of March. So just a little aside for you, and that was in Freshers Week as well. So my first research. So this was the first bit of work I did in Lancashire Polytechnic as part of my course, and it's image processing, but not as you would think of it nowadays. This isn't image processing using computers, it's actually using optics. And you can see how we used optical systems to take an image, which is the bottom left image there that says dB with the lines on, and then in the back Fourier plane of the lens, you're actually able to actively image manipulate with literally with a Sharpie and on acetate. And I was able to remove those vertical lines and then reconstruct that image to get back to the original letters dB. And I was hooked. That's me. I loved imaging, and from then on, that is what's defined my career. So during that period, I joined Leeds University in a group making digital mammographic test objects, and we did some of the first digital images in the world, actually, at that time, whilst I was still in Lancashire Polytechnic. So the task that we were doing in breast cancer, you can get tumours such as here, but also you can see the pointer, but it's that sort of mass in the centre of that mammogram there on the left. And on the bottom right, you can see all these little white specks. Those are called calcifications, and they are often the earliest or only indicator of breast cancer, and they're really hard to see. So our job was really to find the dots, find those small specks. That's another theme that runs through my research, is finding the dots, basically. So I mentioned we made the first digital mammograms. Those were done using a traditional camera system, but using a analog to digital converter. And there you can see one of the first images on the top right there, that this is a piece of mammographic breast X-ray, and you can see how now we have a digital image, we can now do image processing using these maps. But the important thing is hopefully you can just start to make out the little dots in the top left quadrant of that image, and those are the signals we're looking for, the dots that we're trying to find in this image. But this was very early stage, and we did go on to improve that system. So in the late 80s, I got my H&D in physics electronics, and I have to say, I don't think I look great in that picture. And that's another theme. I don't look good in pictures myself. But I did use that H&D as a ability to do a 2-year degree in computational physics at Salford University. And I would really like to take this opportunity to thank the university for its policy of widening participation. And now that I'm an honorary professor there as well, it sort of feels like they've been there for me from my early career all the way through to my late career. So again, thank you to them. So I mentioned we carried on that work. So when I left the university, I actually got my first job in the University of Leeds. And you can see we carried on that work with more sophisticated images. You can see the original image there on the left is a really nice digital image. This is actually a spiculated lesion, and these are calcifications that I was talking about in there. And using, again, relatively simple mathematics, we're able to extract the signals. You can see here different representations of the same signals. This was, I did a master's degree by research using this work. But once we have those signals, we can start to extract them. We can start to do adaptive processing and actually outline the areas of interest, which in this case are the calcifications, and draw boxes around. The reason for this is when a radiologist or a clinician is looking at the mammograms, at the images, we could actually put a box up and say, look here. we think there are calcifications here, and this is where you need to look. So as a prompt, as an aid to the diagnostic task. But do you know something we didn't publish for whatever reason? And the first paper that was published on this was back in 1989, 1990, and that's been cited well over 200 times now. So that was a technical fail, not publishing that work. But again, moving forward with mammography, here's one of those test objects I mentioned earlier. And this was actually probably my first innovation. I have many innovations now, but this is probably one of the first as part of the team. But it was my first academic paper as well. So this is a nice aside that this is the first work that we did. And if you are looking, you will find little clusters of microcalcifications in this sort of, maybe you can make out the calcifications in that sort of central zone on the right there as well. So this test object is used to test X-ray systems to make sure it can actually see the features that we will see clinically as a simulated image. So I left the University of Leeds and went and joined the NHS. And I went to the Christie Hospital in Manchester, and I became a radiation protection advisor, which is a role for medical physicists to basically advise a hospital on safety of using radiation. That could be X-rays, it could be radiotherapy, it could be many different areas. I then also became a magnetic resonance imaging safety expert, which is very similar to radiation protection expert, but is in the area of magnetic resonance, which obviously has different safety risks, which are more about the magnets involved. I then moved back to Leeds. I refer to this as Pennine ping pong. For those who know geography, Leeds and Manchester are on either sides of the Pennines, and I've literally popped from one side to the other during my career. So I came back to Leeds this time as a radiation protection advisor, and was very lucky to be awarded an NIHR fellowship to conduct a PhD. And again, a thanks to the NIHR fellowships for that opportunity, and I would highly recommend that to anybody who is looking for starting an academic career, particularly from the NHS side. So what was my PhD in? It was in assessment of inherent ability to detect clinical abnormalities in images. So the premise was, do people have an inherent ability to see those features we were looking for, those dots that I keep referring to, either the tumours or the calcifications? Do people have an inherent ability to see those? So if that's true, we can use anybody really to do that detection task. We can help augment that specialist workforce with other people, and hopefully potentially reduce any error from in that diagnostic process by optimizing that detection task. Basically, my PhD was in finding the dots. These are images will show, these are computer simulated images of different textures that we wanted to determine visibility in. So the top left there is a brain texture, then there's the top right is the bone texture, and bottom left is breast texture, and then there's a simulated tumor there in the bottom right. The far image on the far side shows the test that we asked observers to do, and basically that's to say which side is the dot in, which side is the tumor in. And we reduced the intensity of the tumour until they just couldn't see it. And then we had a measure of their threshold of detection. So 4 years work, and I ended up with 2 graphs. But these graphs are really quite interesting. The one on the left shows that there is no significance between diagnostic staff and non-diagnostic staff and the members of the public when we're looking for dots in the brain texture. But in the, sorry, there is a significance, sorry, there is a strong significance. There is a much better chance of detecting a clinician detecting a tumour in the brain texture than on the bone texture on the right, where there is no difference. We cannot separate out the performance. And this is because we showed that detection of abnormalities, tumours, depends on the context that it is in, on that textural background, i.e. if it's a noisy background, that induces noise in the visual system of the observer, so they had greater difficulty, and it reached a point where your expertise was overwhelmed by that noise, so there was no benefit in being an expert. But where you weren't overwhelmed by the noise in the image, the expertise could come through. So I got my PhD, and also I think interestingly the photos started getting better as well. But yeah, that's a matter of opinion. But I carried on with that work, and the important thing for me is that the experimental work that we obtained during that study showed that there was a correlation between the size of a tumour and your ability to detect it. So the graph on the left is the real observer data, showing along the bottom an increasing size of dot, of tumour or whatever the feature, and going vertically is that threshold of detectability. And you can see the different textures there from brain, breast, bone, and white noise, and you see characteristic curves. But on the right, you see mathematically modelled version of that, which is simply the inverse of the signal to noise ratio in Fourier space, which is just a mathematical way of saying we've represented the frequency information rather than the spatial information, which you see in a normal image. But to me, this is really important because it allows us then to say, okay, we can now look at this image and see where it's hard to see things. This is unpublished work, by the way, and this is a regret that we didn't publish this work. And again, I can't recall why we didn't at the time. Probably just didn't get round to it. But the importance is that you can actually apply this model now to a actual mammogram, and you can see here on the right the higher intensity regions shows where you will miss things. So those are the areas to look at. And you can see at the edge, the far edge of the mammogram here, you can see the high intensity region. So definitely need to look around that region. But the axillary edge here as well, you've got a really sharp band of where it would be hard to see a tumour. And indeed, in the area of interest, the tumour on this image, you can see that around that it's also hard to see other tumours potentially. So if you had overlapping tumours, it'd be difficult. Again, this is unpublished work, but actually informs on that detection task in actual images. Another aside here is another innovation that we developed. This innovation is to test your display, your monitor that you're looking at. All digital imaging ultimately ends up on the display because that's how we get the image into the human visual system and the brain. But that process can be flawed. You might not have your television, your screen set up properly. The lighting in your room might be really bright, or actually you might not have your glasses on, or your eyesight might be compromised and you're not aware of that. So the idea is that we will challenge you, we will test your display with very simple challenge response letters, as you can see in this case. And if you can see those letters, then you can use the monitor to look at clinical images. If you can't see the letters, we need to know why. Is it you? Is it your lighting? Is it your monitor? But we need to check. So hopefully you are all testing your monitors now, and you should be seeing Z, G, S, and P. And if you can see those, then you are seeing 5% contrast across the range of images and should be good to go. So again, going back to this digital image processing and the quality of those, I guess, is the problem is all processing can introduce artifacts. It just happens the artifact is useful. So in this case, we have a tooth with a filling there, and on the left you can see the original image, and in the middle you can see it after we've sharpened it. So the intended effect of the artifact is a nice sharp image. The unintended artifact, though, is underneath the filling. You can hopefully see with my cursor a shadow, and that shadow mimics more decay. Recurrent caries is what it's referred to. And on the right, you can see a real recurrent carie underneath that filling there on the right. And we actually showed that radiologists, dental radiologists looking at these images couldn't tell the difference between an artificial processed carie or a genuine carie. So we developed a tool. So this is another primary theme of my work, is what I refer to as point of use quality assurance. This is testing at the time we create an image that that image is as it should be, that that honesty in the image, the probity is there. And in this case, this is an X-ray marker that shows the side of the image that's used normally. Left or right is used to show the side of the patient. You can see here on this this right marker here, the physical device on the left. In the middle, what it looks like when it's X-rayed. and on the right is what it looks like when you process the image. And again, you should start to be able to see the shadows coming through in the top part of the eye. You can see a sort of darker shadow around there. You can see a darker shadow on the bottom the bottom down on the R at the left-hand side, and even some positive features being generated in there as well. But what that allows us to do then is, with a knowledge of what you should see, we can then look at what you do see, and we can mathematically work backwards to what's really there. So that allows us to basically create an honesty indicator. So this red to green bar shows the honesty of that image, how close that image to what we think it should be based on that reference marker, that point of use quality assurance tool. And you can see on the left image there, we've got a really good correlation with what we think should be there. We've got a very good honesty. But on the right, when we've induced again that Überschwinge artifact, that shadow around a high density region, you can see that the algorithm is able to go, actually, this is not a very honest image. This is being heavily processed, and you should be cautious. And again, this is please ignore the maths, but for those who are interested, it's relatively simple maths, but again in Fourier space, where it's actually quite easy to get quite complex information about an image in a quite accessible way. Oops. 2007, I had a sporting injury, and for those who are perhaps not versed at looking at CT scans, on the right-hand side of my skull here, there is a 6-inch fracture of my skull, which actually the fracture was not the problem. It was the post-concussive syndrome that I developed afterwards, which left me quite unwell for a number of years, and indeed about 10 years to recover from that, with loss of memory, stuttering, loss of smell, loss of taste, and other issues. Anxiety is another one that you can often get with these injuries. And yeah, that was difficult. But life happens, I guess, and this is an adverse situation, but you just have to keep going. So I did keep going, and during this time I went on to become the head of medical physics and engineering in Leeds Teaching Hospitals, and I was actually head of that department for 13 years, and I was very proud of my time there. I also went on to become the president of the Institute of Physics and Engineering and Medicine in 2015. Again, thank you for them for suggesting me for this talk today, but also for supporting me and giving me the opportunity. Because the great thing about being a member of a professional body, it gives you a chance to get that experience, some professional development in an area you might not ordinarily in your workplace. And indeed, for me, it's really helped me with my new role as Chief Scientific Officer in the Trust, having had that senior leadership experience from IPEM. But whilst I was president of IPM, I probably had my career high. Well, there's no probably, I did. And basically, it related nothing to do with imaging and nothing to do really with physics. It was a Lego, or sorry, I should say, model brick toy of a linear accelerator. That is, this device is used to treat cancer, and it basically delivers radiation in a very shaped way to tumors to effectively kill the tumor, but to try and not harm the patient in the process. It's quite a process. You have treatments over a number of weeks, short periods, but over a number of weeks. But you're in a room on your own because of the risk. For adults, that's scary, but for kids, it's really not nice. So there's a lot of therapy, play therapy, for instance, to help children overcome the anxiety or the concern, so they get the best treatment and they can avoid sedation, which is really something we want to try and avoid. So this toy, this kit was developed to help with play therapy, young patients in their radiotherapy. And I'm very proud to say that has been given to every radiotherapy department in the UK. It's gone worldwide, and I believe you can still get these through Birmingham Hospitals charity. So if you wish to purchase them, you can purchase them from there, and we are still providing them worldwide. And I have to say, I was immensely humbled to have that kit put into the Science Museum in London, and it is still there on permanent display. And also very proud that my picture's there, but alongside William, who was the first patient to receive the kit in Leeds. So again, that definitely was my career high, and not one I would have predicted, I guess. So we're still talking about a little bit of an aside here. This isn't my core research, but this is my day job. And the day job moved into overdrive when COVID hit. And there was a requirement from the trust to step up the number of basically intensive care and critical care beds in the hospital overnight almost. And that was a challenge because we didn't have enough equipment, we didn't have enough ventilators. So we did identify that there was a device called a NIPI-3, which is, and I'll show you a photo in the next slide, which is used to support breathing in sleep apnea, where patients have difficulty breathing at night, and to basically push air into the lungs. So we remodeled this device. You can see it on the left. We worked with the University of Leeds, with clinicians from intensive care, with nurses from respiratory medicine, with clinical engineers. And you can see Steve, Stuart, Peter, Martin there in the top left picture. And believe me, it's all about the team. It's all about people, this sort of activity. And we worked tirelessly to convert these devices. And we were successful. In fact, it was Martin in the red shirt there on that photo. He's a respiratory nurse, and he came up to us when we were working and said, guys, what were you trying to achieve? And we said, we're trying to give ventilation to our patients similar to a ventilator. He said, we've been doing it for years. We just entrain oxygen at the mask. And we learned then that actually the technology was already there, it just hadn't been validated. So all this work we did was around validating basically Martin's suggestion of entraining oxygen at the mask. But that then meant we could go on and look at breaking this down into its simplest parts. And it's basically a fan that you can control, very accurate fan, but a fan that pumps air, and you can then entrain oxygen at the mask. And hopefully you can see me pointing that just below the face mask, where the green filter is, with the purple attachment, there is a little inlet port where the oxygen goes in. And we proved that we could give treatment and therapeutic levels of oxygen therapy, if you like, respiratory support through CPAP with this device. This device costs tens of pounds, I think up to £100 in prototype form, but it's now gone to Uganda. It's been clinically evaluated. It's also being used in an end-of-life study in pediatrics. And I know there are discussions around manufacturing this device in Uganda now in order so they can actually make their own technology. But also importantly for us, if we have another pandemic, we now have the knowledge and technology to scale up production of these ourselves for those times of national need. And I'm an absolute great believer in frugal innovation, cutting things down to what we need, both for the NHS, but actually more importantly for lower middle income countries, because they really do have a lack of access to some of these technologies that we take for granted in the UK. So another aside is new hospitals in Leeds. Unfortunately, we've been put into the second wave. If you've seen a new hospitals programme announcement recently, we're not going to build this hospital currently. It will now be 2032. But a new hospital was a catalyst for change and a catalyst for innovation. So my job was to lead on the culture of innovation and technology change required for this new hospital. And one of the solutions I came up with was to create this thing called the innovation pop-up, which is basically a just do it idea to get staff involved in innovation, to get industry involved in innovation, and to grow that culture in the trust, ready for the new hospital to open. So we've got the staff ready, the equipment in, but actually the benefits of industry working with us. And you can see there the middle photo shows the room as we found it. It was basically a dump. And then on the right, you can see the innovation pop-up as it is today, which was funded very kindly by Fujitsu, Intel, and the Leeds Hospital charity. But the importance of that is that we had a plan. We started small with a pop-up, but now next is going to be our old medical school. That building you see in front of you, it's a grade 2 star listed building that is now vacant or being vacated in Leeds and is going to be turned into a health tech innovation centre in Leeds. It's adjacent to the hospital, and this is a very exciting opportunity for us to push forward that health technology, innovation and economy in Leeds. And ultimately, we hope that at the end of all of this, we will have an innovation village on the campus. You can see the new hospital there in the background, the very large hospital that will now not probably look like that, but hopefully in 2032 we can start building something there. But at the front here is our old hospital, the Gilbert Scott design building, the old medical school, and then all of these buildings that I've pointed to the far left and on the far right will be new. And that will really drive the economy, but actually drive forward health technology innovation in Leeds. So I mentioned pathology in the title. That's because I now have a role in the National Pathology Imaging Cooperative, which is a UKRI Centre of Excellence funded to roll out digital pathology across the UK. Currently, we have over 30 hospitals, and we're now building on this core to try and amplify and maximise the benefits of this large-scale deployment, not just for access to digital images, not just for rapid diagnosis, but also to help with the shortage of workforce so we can share images, but also to create a platform for artificial intelligence. Again, artificial intelligence is important to help with the growing demand for diagnostics, but also for the workforce pressures. And our aim would be a digital image for every cancer diagnosis by 2028. I'm not sure we will achieve that, but if anybody's got a few million lying around, we'd be very happy to spend it on that for you. But I believe this is all underpinned by quality. So I lead a quality team here in MPIC, and we started at the beginning. We're looking at all aspects of quality. And for those who don't know, you're looking at that slide there is exactly what we are working with. They are histology slides which show different, in this case, there are 6 different types of tissue. They've been sliced very thinly on a microtome to about 3 to 5 microns. They then are stained with histological stains. And then we look at those traditionally under a microscope, and we can make that diagnosis from that image. This is the traditional way of doing things. But the process now is become more complicated. We have the old processes of, on the left, pre-staining, which is all the tissue preparation. We then have staining, scanning. We have post-analysis, display and reporting, metadata, and now AI. Every single one of those can introduce variation, and they compound on each other. And my worry is that up to date, we haven't had full quality control on all stages. And this can be demonstrated here without staining variation. Here are 8 labs. 6 of them work very closely together. And you can see that on these 2 different types of tissue, this is the same staining protocol. These should be the same images, but there is a wide variation. Which one is right? And this is a problem for AI. This variability does cause AI problems because it needs to be trained. And which data does it get trained on? And does it need retraining in every hospital you move to? So our stance is to try and standardize that. So why does it matter? Well, here we can see a piece of liver tissue in the middle is normally stained, left is understained, on the right overstained. And on the bottom, you can see automated cell detection, which has counted the number of cells. And it has got it varying from 400 to about 1,200, depending on whether you're understained or overstained. And again, which is correct. But it does show how that stain variability is really important for computer analysis and how we should try and standardize that as well. We can correct for some of the variation, but some we can't. Ian, I don't know if you've put your hand up for me. Okay. So we've developed a solution for this, a way to quantify that stain variability. Hasn't been done in 180 years, but here you can see our tool, another point of use QA tool used in our lab to allow us to quantify stain variability. And you can see in the middle picture there, the stain responsive biopolymer that we use to test the staining system. And on the right, we have the variation that you can see. And because of that, we can now measure. And once we can measure, we can start to set standards. This shows those 8 labs I mentioned. Look at the variation. But if we just got them all to stain to the same intensity, we would reduce variation by 30%, which is huge. But importantly, we can look at the use of those reagents. And here we can see how those reagents over a period of a week decay, become less efficient. So we can actually optimize that process. We can improve the standard, consistency, but actually we can now optimize, saving chemicals, making faster, better diagnosis, and saving potentially the NHS money. Here's another tool we developed. We developed it with industry, for industry, but it was developed here. But this is one for testing our scanning instruments, because I said about every stage has variability, but so does the scanner as well. And this shows just that wide range of variability. That graph shows the distribution variation from the known color. So if we've got a 0, then we are getting exactly the right colors we're putting in. And if we get a high number, we have a large variation from the color we're looking for. And on the right, you can see that there we have 4 different types of scanner. And you can see that there is quite a range of variation between the scanners. Again, another source of variation. So the last source of variation I'm going to talk about is the display. So what's the problem? Well, we have to look at images, digital images on the display, and that can cause confusion. Which one is the right one? When we go to a store to buy a television, this is what we see. Large displays on the bottom, medium ones in the middle, small at the top, different styles, different colors. Which one's right? Well, usually we just pick the one we like the look of. I think it's probably the same in digital pathology, but we have the same problem. These are 8 displays showing the same image with the camera fixed to give the same parameters, and we can see that variability across the monitors. Which one is right? Which scanner was right? Which stain is correct? All of this needs quantification and control. There's a lovely quote here that says, "We proffer that choosing one's display for digital pathology will be equally as important as currently selecting one's microscope." So we developed a tool. This is you'll recognize this. This is a repeat of what we did with the X-rays back in many years ago. And we now have another point of view QA test for testing the display. And hopefully you're all testing your display with color this time. And this time we use a metric called delta E, which is a difference in color from the known color. And the letters you should see on that screen are PPSN. And if you're quick enough and you can snap that with your camera, that QR code will take you to the test so you can do it for real. This slide shows why that matters, because top left, you can see a darkened room, top right with the light on in the room, bottom left, you turn on desk lamp, and then in the bottom right, you open the curtains on the sunny day we have each year. And you can see how that variability can be compromised, that visibility can be compromised just by the ambient light in the room. So this test is online. It's been used since we put it online for COVID to support home reporting. It's been used over 8,000, nearly 9,000 times now. And there's a 6% failure rate still, which is quite high to think that 6% of people looking at monitors could potentially not be able to see the features they need to see clinically. So what have we done about this? Well, we invented our own monitor. This is my monitor. All that research that I've done for the last 30 odd years that you've been hearing about has now appeared in this device. It's got built-in features around measuring the light, controlling quality, built-in color sensors, and it is actually being launched in Singapore in May. And again, I'm immensely proud of this. And it's also got the built-in quality control tool that I mentioned earlier, and you can see it there as well. WJYY if you're interested. So I mentioned about artificial intelligence and how important it is. Well, it's a misused term. I think it can cause confusion, but generally it describes adaptation of an algorithm, an ability to think or improve. And this requires data, it needs to be trained, and that training needs to allow for natural variability. My argument is trying to be, let's reduce that variability by improving quality and consistency, and then that will make the AI easier. And we all use AI. We use it on a daily basis. And you can see here some examples of the use of AI, your smartwatch, Google, SatNav, they all use AI. But here we have AI being used medically. This is detecting microcalcifications and other features. And you'll see this is very similar to the work we were doing way back with our work in the 1980s. It's finding the dots again. And this is what computers are really good at. And the same in pathology, where you can see here the mitoses, the splitting cells being identified and highlighted in the image to assist the pathologist in doing that work. But we have concerns about AI. You can see there the deep fake in the middle of somebody who doesn't look like Tom Cruise being made to look like Tom Cruise. And of course, we all have concerns about the Terminator. There's a list there. I won't go through them all, but basically all of these concerns about AI add up to trust. And we need to get trust into the equation. And my argument, of course, is going to be that quality helps us to develop trust in these new disruptive technologies. So is AI to be feared? Or is it just misunderstood? Here we have an example of a find the muffin or find the chihuahua image, and actually AI can't do this. It fails because it's not seeing what it's trained to see, what it wants to see, what it needs to see. And this is an example of how even a small change in an image can change what AI can see. So on the left, you can see that the AI has found that it's a panda with 57.7% confidence. But then we add some noise in. That noise, you can't see it in the image. It's so low intensity, you can't see it. But it changed the AI to say that it's now 99.3% confidence it's a gibbon. And that just shows how that variability in the data set can dramatically alter the AI output. So my take on all of this, AI plane has definitely taken off. The potentials are huge for medicine, particularly for taking a heavy lift with our pressured workforce, but we need good training, we need transparency, we need validation, we need quality assurance to me. And quality is important because we earn the trust in our patients by insisting on quality. That is part of our NHS constitution. So I am committed, as are all my colleagues, to insist on quality where we can. And I think in that way we get the trust. If we have trust, then we can use the AI if we have trust in AI. And I think healthcare scientists and scientists as a whole have a major role in ensuring that the public and patients have trust in AI and what we are doing. So here's the AI airlines. In this case, it's going to Ibiza. So we're off to Ibiza. And words you never want to hear on a plane. Do we have enough fuel? Do we even have brakes? Where's Ibiza? Who packed the food? And are we there yet? And it's the same with AI. AI can help save the NHS, but we need explainability. We need quality data and metrics. We need to make sure we don't have the foul-ups that we hear about in the press. And we need to prove it's safe to give that trust to our patients. And are we there yet? So my final slide and my final thoughts. I haven't had a traditional academic journey. I hope I've shown that you can do it your own way, but it does feel hard at times, I have to say. And resilience is really important. So look after yourself and be resilient. Definitely, if you don't publish, it didn't happen. And my embarrassment and my shame is some of the work I presented today was not published. It didn't happen, but it's relevant and it's important. You can be ahead of your time as well. A lot of my work was done 30 years ago, and it really didn't take off because we didn't have the computing power. We didn't have the AI of the future and digital pathology. You just got to believe in your work. You've got to keep going, and you've got to wait sometimes for others to catch up. And my final statement is I've had a fantastic career. Science is a fantastic career. Healthcare science, medical physics is a fantastic career. But most important to me, I believe my work has and will continue to be a benefit to patients. And that's what really matters. So thank you for listening. I think there may be some time for some questions. I'm sorry I went very quickly. There's a lot to get in a lifetime. I'm happy to take any questions from you.
Fantastic, David. Thank you very much for a tour through your life and how some aspects of science, imaging, have changed over the last 20, 30 years. Now we have about 10 minutes for potential questions. Anybody can post a question in the Q&A. I'll be picking them up and if necessary, summarizing them and putting them to David. We have one question at the moment, which is about access to slides recording afterwards. And just to confirm that there will be a recording available of this talk on YouTube within the next week or so. So I'm going to start off, David, with a question about innovation and something which you highlighted in the case of Leeds, which is around adoption and spread. And obviously innovation occurs everywhere across the NHS. How do we go about ensuring that what you do really well in Leeds is picked up, adopted, and spread elsewhere? Or similarly, how do you look at picking up innovation coming from other places?
Wow, that's the $6 million question. So there are national initiatives going on, I'm aware of, to try and speed up the adoption of innovations. And I think that's really important that we have that. I think we need to, first of all, identify some of the problems that we have. Some of it is around trusting our colleagues have done work correctly. I know there's a lot of not invented here syndrome in adopting technologies, but I do think part of it for me is that making it commercially available. It's got to be available, it's got to be sustainable, and it's got to be available to be adopted. And it also needs to have the evidence and the data behind that. But I do think we need to look at, as a system, the NHS, we are not great adopting innovation. That is a fact. And I think, like I say, understanding those barriers to adoption of innovation is really important. And pressure, time, finances, they all play into that. So I think as a country, we need to look at that and try and work out how we overcome those. But I know there are some fantastic initiatives coming forward from the Department of Health and DHS. So hopefully they will help with that.
Thank you. I'm going to ask another question now, and you talked quite a bit about standardization, which I agree is critically important. I come from the blood sciences end of healthcare science, where standardization and metrology is very firmly embedded. And obviously that's more of a challenge in some other areas. Do you think it matters what the right answer is in terms of your approach to monitors, color, etc., or is the important thing that everybody's reading the same thing, whether it's the same, whether it's right or not? Is it harmonization, in other words, comparability, or is it everybody getting the right answer, which is most important?
Okay, so I think we have to strive for the best. We have to, that quality piece. We need to strive to do the best in class in whatever we do, but then make sure that we're consistent in doing that best in class. I think that would be my answer. So with the quality, I think the first thing we have to do is be able to measure the parameters, and then we have to agree on what those standards and guidelines need to be in order to drive up quality, not to standardize a mediocrity. And I think that's what is really important. So there is another piece of work here about what we need to do the job. There is a little bit of evidence base here that we have a body of work already going on. Well, the work going on, the day job, the pathology day job is happening, and we are not getting comprehensively wrong. So we can look to what we're doing now as a good start for that standard. We can look at what we are doing across the board, but then we need to drive that quality up, and like I say, also drive up the consistency.
Good. Okay. So and maybe there's a role for the national measurement system and the laboratories which are responsible for it in this space as well. But that's probably a topic for another Science Council webinar, maybe on a future occasion.
I absolutely think we need standards and guidelines, and as soon as possible in every area where we have variability and an ability to measure, we should do that.
Thank you. So there's a question there, David, and you've talked about your own journey and experience. I guess you must be asked for advice from time to time by people at the early stages of their career about where they should focus their efforts. What advice do you generally give in those circumstances?
I think it obviously will vary depending on the individual and their own needs and situation. There are obviously the national systems in place for clinical chemical scientists, for instance, and our technologists, which I can signpost people to. But I guess there's I'm very passionate, as you can tell. I'm a great believer in equal opportunity, and that equal opportunity is also about widening participation, so everybody has a chance. And I think the answer would be, if the standardized routes, the normal routes, we'll call it, into the profession aren't for you, don't give up. Find your own way and be resilient and have the passion to do it. There are other routes. There are equivalence routes. You can go sideways. You can transfer. There's lots of ways you can do this. I think the first thing is to have a passion, have a vision, to stick to that and believe in yourself. Hard work does come into it. Luck does come into it sometimes. But definitely, I hope I've set out in my presentation that you don't have to follow a traditional pathway to be successful. You just got to believe in what you're doing and have that personal resilience.
So picking up another question that's been posted there, whenever you were talking about the standardization tools around colour, do you think there's any way that those approaches can be embedded in external quality assurance schemes rather than being used by individuals themselves to try to assess, monitor quality, etc.?
Absolutely. That's our vision. Again, going back to the if there are no tools, we need the tools. So we're creating some of these tools because they didn't exist, including the display test and the stain assessment tool. Then we gather the evidence for those to prove that they are doing what we believe they should be doing and can be used in the way we think they should be used. Then there's trying to set standards and guidelines, but then those can get adopted by those bodies as metrics. Literally today, we've had a paper published alongside NEQAS, who are the external accreditation service for laboratory science, looking exactly at that colour and metrics of that. So you can see that we are working with these organisations already. And I do think that's really important. Going back to innovation, you've got to move things onto a sustainable and resilient footing in order for them to make the impact that you wish. And I think that's really important as well.
Thank you. So it's almost 1 o'clock. I'd like to formally thank David for a great talk and for engaging so positively with the questions. Thanks to all of those of you who've attended. If you've had to nip in and out, then please catch up on the YouTube video subsequently when it's posted. And a big thanks finally to the Science Council for having arranged and organised this webinar. We heard a little bit about the Science Council at the beginning, and Catherine mentioned that there are other webinars this week and an ongoing programme of activities organised by the Science Council, and I'd encourage you to have a look at their website for further information on those. So thank you all very much. It's been a great session, and David, particular thanks to you.
Thank you.
Goodbye.